Pull up a chair. This is the open source triple play. About a month ago, I was at a customer's and their CEO had gathered together 500 people in IT from around the world, and his goal in that conference was to get these people to meet each other, but most importantly to understand how this company was going to re-architect itself to become competitive for the 21st century. This change, he promised, was going to break things, it was going to be painful, but it was going to change the game, and he was going to do this with open source. Now, this is probably one of the first times that I've heard a CEO talking about the importance of open source to the company. And he used metrics, which I think were absolutely applicable to so many other environments I've seen. And what he did is he drew a graph that basically said, here is the percent of IT operations costs, and here's the percent of IT headcount cost as a percentage of revenues. And what he said was that he wanted to go from about 33% cost of operations, so that's the cost of the computers, the cost of the software, the cost of the lights, power, cooling, etc. He wanted to drop that down to about 20%. And he wanted to take IT headcount cost from about 25% and move that down to about 20%. And his belief was that if he could move these costs as a percentage of revenue down, that profitability would go up. That's obvious. But he didn't want to do this by making cuts. He wanted to do this by growing revenues. And of course, if you grow the revenues while keeping your costs in line, the percentages naturally work in your favor. Now, the problem with growing revenues is he's been flat for 4 years because he's sort of reached the plateau of what he could do in the market. He's doing business with 23 of the top 25 people in the market. That's not a lot of revenue growth. But he was convinced that a combination of open source technologies that he could put on the floor and open source best practices that he could get his people to do would change these dynamics. And he was going to count on his sales guys to figure out how to grow revenues to make it possible to achieve these results. And what this did is it crystallized for me this open source theory in practice. Now, that theory had application in helping this customer and helping so many other customers that Red Hat does business with. Let me redraw this graph in a way that makes it a lot easier to understand, because nobody understands better down here. They all understand better up there. This is the open source triple play. This is the revenue delivered per IT dollar spent. And if you go from 33% to 20%, you get a 5-to-1 payoff. And this is your headcount this is improving your headcount. And if you grow revenues, it goes up here, okay? And the open source triple play is, number one, save money on TCO. Take out the expensive proprietary technologies and replace it with an open source architecture. Number two, improve collaboration. Now, let me just give you a little aside. I came into the world of improving collaboration by writing the GNU C++ compiler. The big idea of C++ is it would make components more reusable and make software development more efficient. It didn't work. A lot of people say C++ is one of the least maintainable programming languages. So what that proves is that you can't improve this with technology alone. You got to change it at the process level. You got to change the way people think and act. And then finally, this big question about revenues. Now, this CEO is looking to his sales guys, but I actually had a better answer which I gave to him, which is that this is called user-driven innovation. And Eric von Hippel has written a book on this subject. He put an article in the Harvard Business Review, April of 2002, which I think is one of the inspirational articles for open source. What it basically says is customers want to and can be innovators, and if companies give their users the opportunity to innovate, they will innovate, and they'll innovate better than you can. And together, both of you will be more successful because you will be providing them with the tools they need, they'll be doing the innovation they need, everything will work so much better. So what we've seen is that even today, Unix to Linux migration is very, very cost effective and provides a great TCO. But if you stop at TCO, you stop too soon. Take the money you save from TCO and put it into adopting and promoting open source best practices. If you observe open source technologies today, you find a trend toward modularity, or some people are now calling super modularity. Whatever the origin of some piece of software that might have been monolithic, when that monolithic software gets out there in open source, people use it in unexpected ways. And when they use it in unexpected ways, they cut it in different ways to say, I need this piece, or I need that piece, or I need to combine these two things in this strange way. And this has led over time to a degree of modularity and reusability that object-oriented programming would never have predicted. And of course, this software may not have been originally designed for that kind of modularity, but like water rolling over stones, sooner or later those APIs become smooth, polished, and good for use. When you build up these open source muscles inside the company and you adopt these best practices, once you're confident that you can take input from others, then it's time to go to the third play, which is user-driven innovation. Give customers the opportunity to innovate, unleash the potential of that network. And this is what expands not only it expands your revenue opportunity by expanding your total available market. The story that Von Hippel tells in his article is that when Jack Welch took over GE Plastics, they were #1 in the world, and Jack Welch said, how can we do better? And what he found was that the traditional model said that you do your advanced development, some people call it R&D, you then build a product and prototype it, and then you give it, or you design, and then you give it to your customer to test, and the customer, more often than not, says, well, it's what I asked for, but not what I want. Change the model. Build a toolkit in your advanced development which allows the customer to then learn by doing. They can use these tools to design a solution, to prototype it, to test it, and then the customer has whatever amount of time and energy they want to put into this process. And the beauty of this model is that it scales to a much larger set of customers than is possible with this model right here. With this model, if your customer is not going to return the cost of this investment, you can't do business with them. GE Plastics could only do business with the largest companies in the world. But when they changed this model, they can do business with everybody. And by doing business with everybody, they expanded their total available market, improved their profitability, increased customer satisfaction, decreased time to order or time to money. Every single top-line metric that Jack Welch used to measure this company improved not by percentages, but by entire categories of business performance. It was just remarkable. We are seeing in the open source world people doing innovation that could never have been done by some proprietary supplier. The guys who went out to go sequence the human genome, the people who are building these amazing GIS systems, the people who are building a variety of different kinds of web services and the Wikipedia, etc. If you don't let your users innovate, you can never afford to build the kind of scalable systems that open source allows. So in short, the open source triple play is improve your TCO metrics and use that money to invest in adopting open source collaboration. Why do you need to lower your TCO first? No company has the money to just go and invest in something because it's smart. You got to invest in something because you got money. You get your money by taking out your high cost, low value solutions. You use that money to invest in open source collaboration. And then once you've proven to yourselves you can take input from others, give the power to the customer. You will be stronger, your customer will be stronger, and your profitability goes up, your revenues goes up, and people think you're smart.